Miriam, you may be seated. And this evening, I want to make it work a little bit. Our Parsha this week contains several, but one especially familiar narrative. It is read on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, and in addition to being part of the Shabbat cycle. And it is the story of Akedat Yitzchak, of the binding of Isaac. It is a powerful tale. It is a troubling tale in many ways, but it is one that has left an indelible imprint on the psyche of the Jewish people. And I want to explore that a little bit with you this evening through a poem written by Chaim Guri. Chaim Guri was born in 1923. He was an Israeli poet. He was a novelist, a journalist, and a documentary filmmaker. He was widely regarded as one of Israel's truly great poets, and in 1988 received the Israel Prize for Poetry, and over the years received various other prizes and distinctions for his work. He was born in Tel Aviv, and after studying at the Kaduri Agricultural High School, Guri joined the Palmach, completed a commander's course, participated in the bombing of a British radar station, which was being used to track Aliyah Bet ships that were carrying illegal immigrants to Palestine. In 1947, he was sent to Hungary, both to do some documentary work, but even more importantly, to bring survivors of the Shoah to mandatory Palestine. During the 1948 War of Independence, he served as a deputy commander in the Palmach's Negev Brigade, and later on served in the Haganah and in the Israel Defense Forces. After studying at the Hebrew University, he spent time studying at the Sorbonne in Paris. He worked, as I said, as a journalist for various newspapers, and in 1958 published a book in which he wrote about the struggles of Shoah survivors in reconstructing their lives in the, quote, normal world. Part of his renown in Israel was gained during his coverage of the 1961 trial of Adolf Eichmann. Guri lived with his wife, Aliza, in Jerusalem and passed away in 2018. But I want to look at one of his works with you this evening. It is rooted in the story of the Akedah. So I'm going to pass this out. And if you're not, pretend. And I am going to do the same thing that Guri did, and that I'm going to assume that you know the story of the Akedah. Those of you who want a quick reference, Genesis chapter 22. The ram came last of all, and Abraham did not know that it came to answer the boy's question, first of his strength, when his day was on the wane. The old man raised his head, seeing that it was no dream, and that the angel stood there. The knife slipped from his hand. The boy, released from his bonds, saw his father's back. Isaac, as the story goes, was not sacrificed. He lived for many years, saw what pleasure had to offer until his eyesight dimmed. but he bequeathed that hour to his offspring. They are born with a knife in their hearts. Oh. Rooted in the story of the Akedah, all its images and metaphors, but what Uri trying to do here? Okay, so trauma is transferred through the generations, and I guess the question for us is, what's the trauma? Okay, that's the story. Isaac, so Isaac experiences the trauma of almost being sacrificed by his father. And that sort of comes through in seeing his father's back, because they go their own separate ways at the end of the story, or at least the text suggests that they go off in their own separate directions. But what else might he be referencing? Mark. That whatever tsuris we experience as a people, it stays with us. Is that a fair re-echoing of what you said? Okay, so that we experience the collective trauma in a personal way. That I'm sort of repeating for the benefit of people who can't hear you and people who are very far away and can't hear you. I'm going to push you a little bit more. I'll give you a little bit of information. I gave you a bit of his bio. I will tell you that this poem was written in 1960. The Kennedy-Nixon stuff is completely irrelevant to Guri. Remember, he's an Israeli. He's born and raised in Israel. He has fought for Israel. He is, I'll say, disinterested in American politics. I think that there are two antecedents to his story, because he's using this ancient and familiar tale, but he's talking about his reality and his generation. One is that he's talking about the Shoah, talking about the Holocaust. And part of what I think he is suggesting is that, yes, we are feeling that as if it were a visceral and real wound, because how many survivors of the Shoah is he surrounded by in Israel? But is this reality a bequest that we would want to leave? Right. And I'm wondering whether he is seeing it as a good thing. And I'm gonna say not. After all, Isaac is never touched by the knife. in the original story. But somehow there's a legacy that goes on. And I think it was early yet, and but it was a reality that many experienced, which was the Shoah became the transmitted knowledge of the Jewish people. No, I'm thinking it might almost be the opposite. Not that we should forget, but I can tell you that growing up in a day school, the theme that was pounded in, and I'm not just saying emphasize, I'm going to say pounded in, was Shoah. We studied it ceaselessly. And, the mantra that was created by Emil Fackenheim when he created his 614th commandment, which was to not give Hitler a posthumous victory. So therefore, you should stay Jewish and you should be Jewish and you should be Jewishly committed, was an idea that was hammered in. And I don't think it was just in my little corner of the universe that idea was pounded and reinforced. But I think it was a mistake in some ways. Picture the following. You are speaking to an intelligent 18-year-old, and you want to convince that intelligent 18-year-old, perhaps as they're getting ready to go off to college, that the reason you should remain an involved and committed Jew is because a generation before you, or 2 generations before you, people wanted to kill you or your family. And so to spite this guy who is dead, you should be Jewish. I'm now the intelligent 18-year-old going like, Bismashuga? Are you insane? Can you give me no better reason to stay involved and committed as a Jew than to spite some enemy? And is this the future I have to face, that people are going to hate me? Thank you very much. I'm out of here. And by the way, that happened. Because it's not an enduring thing. You don't survive on spite and anger and animus. You need to have a positive valence. And to some degree, I wonder whether he's reacting to how history was taught to some degree in Israel. The sacrifice of prior generations is now part of the fabric of your DNA, and you owe to them. So is it true? Sure, it's true. You can't escape it. You can't escape our history and our past. But we have to do more than leave it as a knife, a wound, and emphasize what we as a people have brought to the world for millennia and what Israel brings to the world in a much shorter span of time. And it can't just be fear. I think that's what he's about. But it is just fascinating how he took an old, very, very challenging story and made it even more so. This is probably my favorite of Guri's poems. Ad Kan. Let's return to our Sidurim. We rise as able for Aleinu, page 56.